So this video resumes at the bottom of page 90 of Blood Brothers, and it covers the section where Edward returns home from his first term at university. In the previous scene, we've just seen the sparse, the way in which Russell uses song and dance to deal with one of these really tragic moments in the play where Mickey's marriage to Linda is blighted by the fact that he loses his job. And we've also talked about the significance that loss of work means for a member of the working class, this group defined by work in terms of the self-respect and provision for the family and pride and all those things. What we're now going to see are more of the consequences of it. So, first of all, when it says that Mickey is left alone and sitting dejected, the fact that we hear Christmas bells is significant. Again, it implies another of these time shifts, these Brechtian subversions of the unity of time, the way in which he moves away from those aspects of the tragedy. Remember, this is very much this idea of a modernization of tragedy, or a democratization of tragedy, if you will. That's what we're seeing here. That's what Russell is trying to write. Now, thanks to Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol, we have this idea in literature that Christmas is meant to be this idealized time of hope and happiness and togetherness. Now, once again, that is what we can call a conventional image, i.e. one that's common to be widely accepted, but it's one that Russell here subverts, because actually this Christmas turns out to be exceedingly bleak for our characters indeed. Now, Edward enters in a duffel coat and a college scarf, unseen by Mickey, very much therefore the uniform of a student. And it's particularly useful because if that can be described as the uniform of a student, it's worth noting that in the previous scene it emphasises that Mickey is in his work clothes even when he is about to get married. So it's worth looking once again at the way that costume is used to define and divide these two boys, further emphasising now not merely the class difference but again the educational difference as well. So Edward creeps up behind Mickey and puts his hands over his eyes. Now this is significant. It's a playful sort of a gesture. Now games are something that are very significant as a motif in this play. It links to that theme of escapism that we talked about previously. But what we see now is that Edward still feels able and willing and eager to participate in them, but Mickey does not. In other words, we're going to see about how Mickey has given up hope to the point where even that element of escapism seems lost to him. That's an important point. Again, it links to this idea of premature aging. We see that Mickey has kind of grown up and out of it, whereas Edward, because of the more sheltered and protected life that he has had, he stays with it, and we'll see this develop now in the next pages. So Edward says, "Guess who?" And Mickey rather bitterly replies, "Father Christmas." Edward leaps out in front of him and see the verb there in the stage directions, leaping and then laughing. We get a sense of the glee and the enthusiasm and the happiness that Edward feels, but furthermore the fact that they're describing the continuous tense there, it emphasises all of those things and says, "Mickey, Merry Christmas." Again, repeated reference to Christmas again here, I think, emphasises the subversion of that Dickensian Christmas idea that we just mentioned. So he laughs and says, "Merry Christmas," and Mickey, unamused, looks at Edward and then looks away. Again, we said about the division that's grown up between them, partly because of Linda, but also now because their lives are diverging. At least previously Mickey had a job, now he doesn't even have a job. In a sense, he feels like the lowest of the low. It's also worth noting something else that's developed in this section. When the two boys were children, the class difference between them was less important. But as they grow older, that gap only widens and its significance grows. So that's worth bearing in mind. So, Edward continues, still playfully, still yet to adapt to Mickey's changed mood, and says, "Come on then, I'm back. Where's the action, the booze, the Christmas parties, the music, and the birds?" But there's no reaction. "What's wrong, Mickey?" "Nothing. How's university?" Now contrast here the utterance lengths between Edward and Mickey. See how monosyllabic Mickey is. See how little he actually speaks, how short his utterances are, in contrast to Eddie and all the enthusiasm that he has. Eddie is a character whose optimism has not been crushed by his life. He goes on now and describes it. "Mickey, it's fantastic. I haven't been to so many parties in my life, and there's just so many tremendous people. But you'll meet them, Mick. Some of them, Baz, Ronnie and Claire, no, lots of them. They're coming over to stay for the new year, for the party. Ooh, it's great, Mickey." See that enthusiasm. See that, see these lists here, the names, the activities, all of this enthusiasm. The party, of course, perhaps linking to the idea of escapism and dancing. These are things that Edward can still cling to, but for Mickey, they've been taken from him. It's only a couple of sections ago that Mickey was saying that he would organise a Christmas party, but of course his life has taken a dramatic turn for the worse since that point. And again, look at Mickey's response. Single word, single syllable, good. In contrast to what's just gone before. Edward tries to cheer him up and says, "Come on, what's wrong? It's nearly Christmas. We were going to do everything. How's Linda?" Still the emphasis on Christmas. I suppose perhaps it's interesting that Eddie is the one who mentions Christmas the most, as if he's the one perhaps who's closest to believing Christmas to be still that happy time. Whereas for Mickey it just comes across as taunting, because he is the one who can't provide any of the things that Christmas is meant to be about. So Mickey continues on. "She's okay," again as with before, and Edward still trying again to rally him. He says, "Well, come on then, let's go then, come on." "Come on, where?" And Mickey explodes now. He says, "What's wrong?" You're a dickhead." Edward is slightly unsure, but laughs anyway. In other words, he can only interpret that in the sense that it's a continuation of the earlier fun and games that they have known. And of course that sort of glee in the use of taboo language is something that bonds them right back to when we met them as 7-year-olds. The whole joke about "you're a fuck off," for example. So he takes it in that way, but of course Mickey now is deadly serious. And so finally he responds. "There are no parties arranged. There is no booze or music. Christmas? I'm sick to the teeth of Christmas, and it isn't even here yet. See, there's very little to celebrate, Eddie. Since you left, I've been walking around all day, every day, looking for a job." It's the strongest sense yet that the mere idea of what Christmas stands for is just a kind of great kick in the teeth, a great mockery to Mickey, the unemployed. Edward replies rather naively, "What about the job you had?" And Mickey says, "It disappeared. You know something? I bleeding hated that job, standing there all day, never doing nothing but put cardboard boxes together. I used to get terrified that I'd have to do it for the rest of my life. But after 3 months of nothing, the same answer everywhere, nothing down for you, I'd crawl back to that job for half the pay and double the hours. Just making up boxes it was. But after being fucked off from everywhere, it seems like it was paradise." More information then now about Mickey and about the premature aging that he's had, and even again if we link to the idea of the sort of cyclical nature of working class life, in his problems with unemployment, there is a reference back to Mrs. Johnston in that aspect as well. You can add that to it there. At some point it probably is worth making a subsection somewhere in your notes for the cyclical nature of working class life, and in that you can cover all these aspects about things like romantic problems, relationship problems, early pregnancy, early marriage, unemployment, and so on. All those aspects then you can cover. Now, at this point again, you can link a lot of the quotations in here, particularly things like the idea that the job was putting cardboard boxes together. You can link that to earlier characterizations of Mickey's job, again from a few scenes previously. Once again, emphasizing the sort of dehumanizing nature of this unskilled labor that he was undertaking. And yet again, the fact that he's now willing to consider that again shows us just how significant any work is to working class people, according to Russell. He longs now even for the limited self-respect that that job would have brought him, and his desperation is reflected in things like crawling. The fact that he says he'd crawl back, and the verb used there. Things like that, and the fact that suddenly it seemed like it was paradise. He's prepared to use that simile, in spite of how bad it was. Again, it highlights that change that's come across him. Now, Edward again now here really shows, I think, the way in which he has not had to grow up. He remains childlike, unlike Mickey, because he says, "Why? Why is a job so important? If I couldn't get a job, I'd just say sod it and draw the dough, live like a bohemian, tilt my hat to the world and say screw you. So you're not working? Why is it so important?" Now, those words must seem like an incredible kick in the teeth here now to Mickey, I think. Repeated, why is a job so important? To someone who has money and has always had money, to someone whose family has money to provide a safety net, Edward can say that. But obviously for Mickey, it seems like a much more important thing. It shows the growing void, I think, that's opened between them. Now, what else then? Live like a bohemian. A bohemian in this context, it refers to a sort of a lifestyle of being a sort of penniless artist. It's a kind of glamorized ideal of being poor that I think very much ignores the actual concrete facts of what that means to have not enough money. It's particularly associated, for example, with things like turn of the 20th century Paris, that idea of starving artists living in garrets and working in cafes and that sort of thing. It's that kind of idea, another sort of simile. But again, the whole point is that the fact that he uses that simile, again, it reflects his naivety. Mickey can't afford to say screw you. He needs the money. He looks at Edward and says, "You don't need understand anything, do you? I don't wear a hat I could tilt to the world." He doesn't even have that dignity. Edward says, "Look, come on, I've got money, plenty of it. I'm back, let's forget about bloody jobs. Let's go and get Linda and celebrate. Look, money, lots of it, have some." He tries to throw some notes into Mickey's hands. Now, when they were children, this class difference, as we've said, didn't matter so much. It wasn't so shameful for Mickey to take things from Edward. In fact, if anything, it's almost a point of pride that he's able to get Edward to do them, because it makes Mickey look and feel tough. Now that he is an adult, he sees this in a totally different way. Charity, as I mentioned before, is traditionally seen as the enemy for the working classes because it represents the ultimate failure of your pride and self-respect, that you can no longer look after yourself and that you have to accept that to survive. And this is now what Edward's gift represents to Mickey, and I think it explains one reason why he reacts so violently. In terms of Edward's naivety, phrases like "let's forget about bloody jobs" links back to his questioning about why it's important before. So there we go. The final thing I think that's structurally interesting here is that he trying to throw money into Mickey's hands is now a kind of echo or a parallel of Mrs. Johnston's attempt to give money to Mrs. Johnston earlier. Now, it's interesting that Mrs. Johnston was very uncomfortable with that. Again, I think for the same reason. But it represents Edward's economic power, and just like Mrs. Johnston, Mickey is hurt and insulted by it. And he replies, "No, I don't want your money. Stuff it." Throws the notes to the ground. Edward picks them up and stands looking at Mickey. He says, "Eddie, just do me a favour and piss off, will you?" Edward replies, I thought we always stuck together. I thought we were blood brothers." Of course, irony, we all, as with all the way through, we know that they're not blood brothers. Well, they're not blood brothers in that sense. They are, in fact, actual brothers, or indeed, real brothers by blood. But Mickey replies, "That was kid stuff, Eddie. Didn't anyone tell you?" He looks at Edward. "But I suppose you still are a kid, aren't you?" And that, then, now, is really what emphasises this. This is one of the things that irritates. Mickey has been forced to grow up, as we've seen, and you can group this criticism here with those earlier quotations about that. Eddie, on the other hand, has been allowed to remain a little bit more free from responsibility, and he perceives that as childlike. The metaphor of him being still a kid. Edward replies, "I'm exactly the same age as you, Mickey." He says, "Yeah, but you're still a kid. And I wish I could be as well, Eddie. I wish I could still believe in all that blood brother stuff, but I can't, because while no one was looking, I grew up." Now, a couple of things there. First of all, Mickey's regret. It's bad enough the fact that he has to live this life, but the fact that he has a successful friend makes it worse, because it simply rams home his own inadequacies as he might perceive them. While no one was looking, I grew up is another good quotation in terms of the premature aging thing that we've talked about previously, so you can group that quotation with that. He goes on then and says, "And you didn't, because you didn't need to." Here now is the accusation, and I don't blame you for it, Eddie. In your shoes, I'd be the same. I'd still be able to be a kid, but I'm not in your shoes. I'm in these, looking at you. And you make me sick, right? That was all just kid stuff, Eddie, and I don't want to be reminded of it, right? So just take yourself away. Go and see your friends and celebrate with them. Go on. Beat it before I hit you. So, there we have it. You didn't because you didn't need to. That sums it up. Because of his position, the middle class, because of the economic power of his family, because of his status in society, Edward has been able to afford to remain insulated from the worst harshnesses of society in a way that Mickey and the working classes have not. It's worth remembering in this play that anything that applies to a character from the middle class or a character from the working class obviously applies to that class as a whole. These are all characters who've got wider symbolic significances. Now, Edward looks at Mickey and then slowly backs away. We see further now divisions having crept in between these two boys. We're getting further away now from the happy moments that we saw earlier in this play. We're getting closer now to a point leading to nemesis, to destruction, where the worst will happen. But on that note, just near the top of page 93, we will leave it there.